Warbling in a New Direction. Chapter 4, What It Means to be Kurtz. Many of the warblers were even more shocked as the three Letterman-wearing members of the New Directions stood and walked in front of Blaine. Everyone had expected the girls to make a beeline for the boy, all claws and hissing. Sam stood slightly ahead, arms crossed, looking down his face, stony and voice dark. Come near him. Call him. Look at him the wrong way and I will beat the ever-loving crap out of you. The dumbest thing you have ever done was to break up with Kurt. He was always too good for you. The blonde shouldered his backpack and left. Soon as Sam was out of the room, Puck had Blaine slammed into the wall and hissed. I don't know what you did yet, Keebler. But when I find out, and I will find out, if it is half as bad as I think, when I'm done with you, I'm making a phone call to Santana and then finding Sylvester. It was at this point that the teacher supervisor finally stepped in, trying to pull the running back off the smaller teen. Okay, involving Coach Sylvester is really not necessary, Puck. Really, they won't find his body. Many of the new boys' head snapped back. That was the thing he was objecting to? Not the threats of physical violence? Not the implication that Blaine had done something awful to Kurt? Nope, it was that there was some crazy coach who would go all Sopranos on a student. What sort of crazy hell had their parents dropped them into? Random physical violence and constant threats of hypothermia, thanks to slushy attacks, weren't enough. Now they had a psycho faculty member to worry about? Wait, is that the name of the boys' gym coach? The football lady? Trent asked, still trying to assimilate. Finn blinked, looking at the prep school boy. Dude. The beast wouldn't do that. She's more suicide drills and stuff. She likes to punish with legal physical pain. Coach Sylvester, he stopped looking around worriedly, as if saying her name was enough to make this phantom of doom show up. She has made people disappear before. Without a good reason. Just because she was, like, bored. She punishes you with physiological pain, humiliation, and terror. Kurt says I have nothing to worry about there, but like two of her favorite students are Santana and Kurt. Nobody messes with Kurt. He shook his head, meeting Mike's eyes as the Asian boy took a shuddering breath. Oh, shit. Does this mean we have to protect Blaine? The usually quiet Asian boy gave Blaine the stink eye. Sorry man, after what Kurt just said, and it sounded like the way he meant it. I just can't. Not even because Tina would kill me or cut me off. Wesley was looking at the assembled male members of Kurt's Glee Club. He'd known that New Directions was different, but they seemed to speak their own language, read each other's minds and be more a family than a school club. Scowling back, Blaine straightened and got his things. I don't know why Sam or any of you think you have the right to interfere in my relationship with Kurt, and I would appreciate it if you all would let Kurt and I work this out on our own. He moved away, stopping in the door with his chin raised. I was the one who was there for him when Karofsky was making his life hell. I was the one who he trusted enough to tell, and cared when all of you couldn't be bothered. Only then did he storm from the class. Okay, why did Kurt have to leave if you guys are this protective? I don't get it. There weren't many of the new boys left. Just what appeared to be the core of the other club. David, Wes, Sebastian, Trent, Nick and Jeff were the only ones who apparently cared what was going on. He watched shame register on the faces of the two boys who had joined the blonde-haired guy originally, then the looks of regret on the Asian and wheelchair-bound boy before the only remaining girl, who had gone completely unnoticed until she drew their attention, and answered. They're like this because he had to leave. We made the mistake once and you guys can't even know what it cost us. Finn was about to be his stepbrother and didn't lift an eyebrow, let alone a finger. Puck, well he might have, but he was fresh out of juvie, and it was way too late when Sam, Mike, and Artie got involved. The damage. God, we were so wrapped up in our own drama that even when we saw it. The girl swallowed and closed her eyes as tears entered them, unable to finish her thought. She obviously held some serious guilt over whatever had happened to Kurt before he'd left. Puck was at her side, holding her immediately. It is easy to forget he needs anyone. He makes it really, really easy to forget that there might be a point where he can't take on the world all by himself. Quinn sniffed, wiping her eyes. Mock. She muttered to the mohawked boy and Puck instantly backed off. Living with Kurt's family had made some really wonderful changes to him. Changes Quinn couldn't deny were drawing her attention more and more. She looked back. From the first day I joined Glee and really started to get to know him, he never took my shit, or Santana's. Back then, we were very angry and cruel to others just because we could be. With Brit in tow, we are still known as the Unholy Trinity. Kurt just dished it right back and then, like some sort of, I don't know saint, he forgave and let us in. Being one of Kurt's girls it's knowing no matter what happens, he will drop everything to be there for you. She smiled, a bit mischievous. And you haven't lived until you've gotten his chocolate chip cookie dough while he gives you a money/petty. Oh. Whipping her phone out, she sauntered out, talking into it, as if she'd completely forgotten she was giving an explanation. Her focus shifted entirely on to her new mission. I'm calling emergency girls' night. We're going to kidnap our boy, get regular Coke, cookie dough ingredients and that popcorn you pour extra butter on. She faded out, leaving Finn and Puck pouting. Man. That is not fair. I say we get Kurt to move it to the house, and we invite the guys, and make it a Glee night in. Puck's grin goes a bit evil as he wiggles his brows. Finn cocks his head to the side before smiling. Totally, dude. But we have to get Sam on board. If we can get Sam in, Kurt will be Play-Doh in our hands. Finn heads off as the bell rings, the two already late for class and not seeming to care at all. Putty, man. It's putty in our hands. Puck sighed but had a rueful smile on his face. The new boys who had stayed behind snapped out of the daze of confusion when the bell rang. All rushing to their own classes. Jeff and David had AP history with Kurt, Mike, and Santana. The three gleeks surrounded the table and waved Jeff to join them without breaking the flow in conversation. The other tables had all been filled as well, so when the teacher frowned, trying to decide where to stick the second new boy, Kurt interrupted. We'll take him. Don't worry. Just like that, David entered the sanctum of Kurt's circle. Sebastian and Wes found themselves in advanced calculus with not only Kurt, but Brittany as well. When the teacher told him to get the blonde to catch him up, he smiled and settled in a desk next to her. Sitting behind the two gleeks, both boys listened in wonder as the cheerleader spoke a language all her own. Kurt nodded along and answered back in regular English as if everything she said wasn't Martian. Advanced French 3 for college credits, reserved for advanced and native speakers, was one class that Sebastian expected not to have with any of the new directions or other warblers. He'd felt disheartened to learn how wrong he was the day Kurt returned. The fair-skinned boy had been out Monday and Tuesday, so Sebastian had wrongly assumed that he had a Gleek-free warbler-free class until Kurt sailed in, speaking to the teacher with beautiful French. Immediately, he and the large black football player started sniping at one another. The player's French wasn't exactly right, and his accent was terrible. Sebastian didn't understand why Kurt would change his accent to match, and even use some of the boy's words. The green-eyed boy watched as Kurt's lips tipped upward just slightly, obviously enjoying his little verbal skirmish with the huge jock. His lips thinned. It was too similar to his and Kurt's interactions for his comfort. Was this something he did with everyone? Will the two of you shut up and stop destroying my native tongue with those accents and, what I can only assume, is horrible Americanized French slang? Sebastian snarled. Kurt laughed right in the middle of the little tiff, which seemed to be amusing many of their classmates. It's not Parisian French, meerkat. Azimio's family is from Louisiana and the region has its own unique dialect and accent. Kurt snapped, his body tensing and eyes going steely, almost exactly like what had happened with Blaine earlier. It sent a shiver up Smythe's spine, it was so cold. The other teen, Azimio Sebastian's brain supplied, turned to give Sebastian a snarl. Also, it's not any of your damn business, new kid. The teacher who, up until now, had simply been watching the exchanges with shock and some sort of wonder, spoke up. Mr. Adams, you will not use such language in my classroom. I go to have a baby and return to a topsy-turvy world. How on earth did you and Kurt manage to put your differences aside and become friends? I'm so proud of you. She was genuinely interested in the answer and smiling. Because Mrs. Whitaker taught only advanced classes, her pool of students was much smaller than normal, allowing her to become more familiar with them. Allowing her to come to know and care about her students. We're not friends. They both answered in English. Sighing, Kurt supplied, there is a tentative truce for David's sake. That was all he was saying on the matter, and the Letterman-wearing teen nodded, not bothering to add anything of his own. Mr. Immaculate French questioned, Bear Cub? Scoffing, Kurt whipped around. His name is David and he attended McKinley for quite some time. Glancing at Asimo, he swallowed. Sometimes, you just need a fresh start. I had Dalton. Sebastian had been told the dirty truth about Bear Cub and his fancy on one very slow night at Scandals between beers. The look he gave Kurt said as much, but he frowned when Kurt raised his brow, mask unchanging. This was not his princess. This person made him want to shiver. Wait, what, his? Groaning, he just thumped his head to the desk. He was in a hell of his own making, and it was just slowly getting worse. Kurt toed his shoes off and threw himself face-first onto his bed. Thanks to an emergency created by Coach Sue, meaning Mr. Shu was fighting once more to keep his Glee club from disbanding, there was no practice. Evidently, she had found a study claiming show tunes cause a rare form of ear cancer that would eat away at the brain. Kurt was 90% sure she just made the stuff up herself and scared people with PhDs into signing it. A warm body curled against his back and Kurt sighed, letting himself snuggle close. Didn't even hear the door close, he muttered. Pressing a kiss to Kurt's hair, the blonde frowned. You could have told me, sweetheart. Told you what? I told him our friends were going to come to our school. I told him that he wouldn't feel so alone. Like he just had me, and we had great sex. I should have known Sam. I should have known when he didn't fight or even say anything about me bottoming. God. He knew when we were having sex. Kurt sat up, looking down with wide hurt eyes. Sam was one of 3 people Kurt was comfortable using the G word around still. Sam scowled and wished he hadn't held himself back at school. Blaine Anderson seriously deserved a black eye. If that's true, then he's a bigger ass than I thought, and I'm not sure anyone can be that big an ass. I kind of think he's a bigger ass than the ass you'd get if you added Santana and Mercedes' asses together and multiplied by 8. Suddenly there was a snort and a sound Sam loved to hear, a tinkling high-pitched giggle. The kind Kurt never let out when he was outside the doors of their home. By 8? Why 8? Oh gaga, Sammy, you are so freaking random. Twisting, he threw himself over Sam's chest and sighed. Thank you. Thank you for not beating him up for me. Thank you for being here and not being mad at me for not telling you. And thank you for making me laugh. Leaning up, he kissed Sam's chin. Come on, Mr. Math, you can help me cook dinner. No. I don't want to cook. Can I just sit at the island and watch? Maybe open some difficult jars for you? He pouted and gave teary puppy eyes. Oh please, tell Finn to give you lessons. He got his skills from me, and I have skills. Those eyes don't even work on me. Now come on, you're making the salad that Dad's gonna complain about. Bert relaxed, moving away from the basement door and toward his den. He didn't know what he would do without that Evans kid. At first, he'd been wary of how close he and Kurt were physically. Kurt explained it, and the blonde even approached Bert about it because he didn't want his Ohio dad to think he'd be so disrespectful. Once he'd been reassured, Bert watched his son flourish with the interaction. He saw Kurt have a guy in his life he could talk to, who listened without the discomfort he and Finn had when it came to Kurt's relationship. A guy who didn't flinch when Kurt surprised him with a hug or arm over the shoulder, like Finn had early on. Sam had never even blinked when shown affection from Kurt. Never held back in showing his own affection toward Kurt, the way Puckerman had. Not that Bert was going to complain about Noah Puckerman keeping his hands to himself. Sam Evans always knew what to say, what to do, and somehow, he seemed to know just what Kurt needed. If Bert got a vote, he was going Team Evans for Kurt's next boyfriend. Maybe he could get t-shirts made. He always loved a good t-shirt and Kurt had that Team Jacob shirt, so they were cool, right? Right?